So I think we're ready. I see that there is already more than 30 people online. So welcome to this GGP webinar. This GGP-Connect series is a monthly meeting where we showcase the work of our national teams. We allow them to share lessons with the group and insights, especially into our new round of data collection. So today the spotlight is on the Norwegian team, and we're delighted to welcome Lars Dommermuth from Statistics Norway and Trude Lappegard from the University of Oslo. Before I pass it on to them, let me just remind you of how it's going to work. So they're going to have 20 minutes to present their work. This will be followed by 20 minutes of Q&A, where you get to pose your Q&A in the Q&A. At the end, after this 45 minutes or so, I will close formally the webinar. But if at that point you still have burning questions or you would like to talk further with the presenters, stay online and we will keep the webinar going for longer. But on all that, again, delighted to welcome Trude and Lars, and I pass it on to you.
Hello, thanks. I'm Lars Dommermuth from Statistics Norway. I welcome you from my home office here in Oslo. I'm happy to talk to you about the Norwegian Generations and Gender Survey of last year in Norway. I will start the presentation and then later Trude Lappegard from the University of Oslo will take over. So let me start with a few words on the background. Even though we have fairly good register data in Norway, which allows us to do a lot of analysis in demography and other disciplines, we also know that there's a necessity for new comparative survey data to investigate the background of demographic changes, and especially since the last GGS, which were the data collected in Norway 2007-2008. We have tried to get funded for a new round of the GGS for several years. It's a very difficult situation, not only as it is expensive, it's also because the register data, we often hear that you can do your analysis based on register data, so why do you need the survey data? And in addition, Norway is a very high-cost country, so it's very difficult to do a data collection where you have to interview people, especially personal contact or telephone interviews are very expensive. So for us who are working with the GGP and GGS, the web survey emerged as the only possible option to get funded or to get enough funding. So then last year, a unique opportunity emerged. After trying to get funded for several years, we finally got some positive feedback from the Ministry of Children and Family, and they found a possibility in their budget and were also interested in the topic, which they have been for years. But then last year they had an opportunity, and also later the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs supported us to some extent, and we were grateful to both ministries. And in addition, Trude Lappegard received a grant from the Norwegian Research Council on a project called Falling Fertility and Rising Social Inequalities, and she was able to reserve an amount in the budget supporting a data collection. In addition, Statistics Norway, so where I'm working, they always politically supported a new GGP, and this political support from the research director and the director of Statistics Norway helped me that I could at least allocate people in Statistics Norway, especially from the Department for Methods and Data Collection, that they could reserve time for it. They still had to get the money from me, but from us, but at least they could use their working time on it. So then we decided we try it, we go in the field, but one requirement is that we had to do it last year. So this is why we also have done it last year. Then there was the question, how can we balance our still very low budget and little manpower with our high scientific aims? So together with Trude and the GGP Hub, we discussed how to do a survey in Norway, and we came up with a model like where Statistics Norway is the data owner. They are drawing the sample, taking contact with the respondents. And this is because they have access to the register data to do this. And they are also a very trustworthy national agency. So it is good to approach people in Norway with the brand Statistics Norway, because they are serious, they are recognized as a serious organization, and hopefully this would increase the response rate. But on the other side, this time we decided, due to new challenges with the GDPR, so personal data protection, not to use registered data when we do the survey, in the sense that all data in the data file will be from the respondent. So we use the registered data only to draw the sample and also maintaining the sample and construct weights, but they will not be part of the data that will be accessible to researchers later, which makes it easier to fulfill all GDPR requirements. And also Statistics Norway is doing the documentation. And besides me in Statistics Norway, also people from the Department for Methods and Data Collection were involved. Then we have the University of Oslo with Trude Lappegard and Axel Christensen. And Trude was already part of the expert group for the first wave for the questionnaire, and she had then to, or she was responsible for the Norwegian GGS to adapt the questionnaire and be using the standard questionnaire, but she will come to that later. And they also, Trude and her colleague did the translation, and were also responsible for testing the questionnaire together with me. And then we have, of course, the GGP Central Hub. And here I want to thank Anne, Gauthier, Arike, Rike, Wojciech, Jablonski, Judy Korps, and Tom Emery, who was still at that time at part of the team, and he helped us also. And of course, they have a huge know-how. They provided the translation tool, which we highly recommend. We think it was a very useful tool. They did the programming of the online survey in Blaise. And the whole survey was running on their servers. So they did, from this technical perspective, they did the data collection for us, and also the GGP Hub did the data cleaning. Yeah. Then let me come to our sample. Our sample is aged 18 to 54 years. This is in line with the technical load of the GGP, as Norway has an own survey on old age people, so we could reduce it to this age group. We decided to go for a gross sample of 50,000 persons. They were randomly drawn from the population register, and experience is that over 90%, 95% in this age group can be contacted by email and phone, as there is the possibility of all residents to provide an email and phone number for official communication with health agency, with like doctors and also other governmental institutions. And in addition, we had an incentive. So we had 65 gift cards. You could win, all respondents that complete the survey could win one of 65 gift cards. The value of each gift card was about 1,000 kroner, which is about 100 euros. And the design of this sample and incentives is based on Statistics Norway's, or the Department of Methods and Data Collection, based on their experience with a web survey in March 2020. So they did a survey on living conditions and also a survey on COVID at that time. And there they had a response rate between 40 to 50% in this age group. So we hoped for at least 5,000 respondents in this first wave, which would give us enough size for the next waves. Yeah. And then we had developed together a fieldwork plan, we went into the field on the 23rd of November, and the survey was online for 30 days until the 22nd December. There was a contact plan established by Statistics Norway. We did send out invitations and reminders to all persons in the sample. Over 96% could be contacted by email and SMS, text messages. There's a small group of almost 500 persons who got a letter, and some of them also got a text message when there was a phone number registered. And we organized it like this, that every weekday, the GGP hub gave us feedback back to us, to Statistics Norway, on the incoming responses, so that we could update the contact plan. So who has started, who has not started, what kind of reminder should they get? Unfortunately, in these days, no presentation is possible without talking about COVID. So here I have used data from the Oxford COVID-19 Government Response Tracker, which I think is a very useful tool. And they have constructed some measures indicating the level of lockdowns and government measures taken. And what you see here, the green line is closure and containment measures. And you see here the first lockdown at the beginning of March. And in Norway, it was the 12th March, which was the decisive date. And then it goes up to 80. The maximum of this index is 100. So it is comparative across countries. In Norway, we have been up to 80, and then it's going down. But what is important is here is our fieldwork period. And you see again, here's a bit higher lockdown measures again. And also the number of cases, which go to this scale, is increasing again. And still, it has to be mentioned that in contrast to many other countries, there has not been an increase in death rates due to the COVID pandemic in Norway. So the confirmed deaths in Norway are really, really low. Even until today, it's less than 1,000. So, but this was just to tell you about the context of our data collection. I'm sure if I've not said it, there would be questions later. So I hope this gives you some input. So then I go again to the field work. So we towards the respondents, we had different kinds of information. We had email and text messages, letters, and in these emails and text messages, we had a direct individual link, so they didn't have to put in a number or something else. And then we had a web page at Statistics Norway, at GGP, and they could contact us. This is how the survey looked and this is how the GGP hub programmed it. This is how it looked on the personal computer. This is how it looked on an Android phone, and this is how it looked on an iPhone. And here we have the email, which has a letterhead of Statistics Norway, and here would be the direct link. This would be the letter to these 500 people without email. This is the web page we had at Statistics Norway, and here's the web page at the GGP with the video telling about the survey, and we called it Survey About Family and Work in Norway. Statistics Norway usually has a policy that they don't want to contact people too often because they have to think about the next survey they conduct, so they don't want to stress people too much. And they had they divided up the sample in 5 or 6 groups. I'll come back to it. And reminders were sent out on different days and times, but all on weekdays. And during the field work, about 172 respondents took contact. I have to go quickly here now through because I see my time is running out already. So here you see the field work. It's the 30 days. And the blue line is then the complete answers ticking in. And because we didn't have an update on the weekends, these days are open, these lines. And then the line on top is when they clicked on the survey. The next is they made the consent. They said, I agree that my data can be used, which we had right in the beginning of the survey. And then the next one is they started. And then we have these other lines here, which indicate the reminders. And you see every time a reminder is sent out, this increases the response rate, and especially reminders to those not started, which is one, for example, is here, increased response rates. And then here we have a black line, and here the survey was not available for 24 hours due to a problem at NIDI. So, and the most important number here is in the end, like we have only, or we have a complete responses for about 30%. So this is below what we expected and hoped for. So this is why we also looked at when we were like in the field where we started looking at very closely at the incoming responses and discussed also with NIDI and with Trude what can we do, and we looked at the questionnaire again. We said like the most important parts of the survey for our perspective are here in the beginning, and we decided that people that answered these parts still can be kept in the data, as for example questions on employment and income will also be part of the second wave, so we can still get some information here. And if we have this one, this data will still be very useful. So we decided to keep some, what I want to tell you is we decided to keep some incomplete answers also in the survey. And here I want to try, we can focus on the first two lines here. The idea is we can get an idea where people did drop off. So we see, first of all, that much more women than men clicked on the survey. So the interest among women was much higher than among men. And then we see, even they clicked on, we already missed 10%, they never start. Maybe they were not happy with the information we gave, but then relatively a lot come to the partnership histories. And then they start with the partnership histories, but then we lose a lot in the next two sections, which is the partnership loops and the fertility. So it seems this part is really relatively complicated to answer, and we lose about 6-7% here before they come to the household. And the rest of the survey seems to be relatively easy, and we lose very few percentages in the end. Also, life satisfaction to the end, it's very few drop off here. Then I just mentioned that in the beginning that Statistics Norway divided up the sample in 5 groups, as then it's easier to vary the exact time when you get reminders. So this helps us also to analyze if there are any group differences, and we see that group 1 has a higher response rate, and this is partly due to a mistake at Statistics Norway, because by accident, really in the end of the field work, they send an unplanned reminder to those not started. And this indicates maybe one of these reminders should have been sent later. So we have a lot of reminders at the beginning of the field work, and this one late really increased the response rate of this group. And here you see the final numbers. After cleaning it, we have 4,565 complete answers. In addition, we have the 475 incomplete, but they answered the first sections, so which gives us a bit more than 5,000 respondents in the data set, which will be available. Comparing the gross sample, net sample, and response rates by specific groups, I want to draw your attention especially to the difference between men and women again. Here the difference is quite big. The response rate is lower for men than for women, and another big difference is by highest level of education, where we have much lower response rates for the low educated, and those with missing education are mostly immigrants, because if you make your education in another country, it's not in the Norwegian system, or less often in the Norwegian system. So they have lower response rates, and it's higher with higher education. So, and then based on these register data, the Division for Methods and Survey Methodology, they created weights, and the weight is constructed in the manner that if the weights are applied, the frequencies will be as the cross sample, and the weight will be, of course, in the data set. I think that's it from my side, and I will pass the word to Trude now. Oh, I have a few lessons learned. I forgot, sorry, I go quickly through it. So overall, it seems to work. What we learned is that this direct individual link is preferable, because as it's very important to make it as easy as possible for respondents. I think it's also important to get the consent in the beginning, because it allows us to use incomplete answers. Some respondents reported problems that it was difficult to insert the dates, and there are a lot of dates to insert. So I think maybe we should think about that, to program that easy, especially on the phone. Yeah, think carefully about timing and reminders, but maybe we can discuss these other points at the end. So Trude.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so in addition to using the baseline questionnaire by GGS, we also added 2 models to our survey. However, when we did this to do it online, we needed the questionnaire to be as short as possible, because we were worried that people will drop off if the questionnaire was too long. At the same time, we felt there were need to also cover some topics that wasn't covered in the baseline questionnaire. So that was sort of a trade-off that we went through in the process. But basically, what for us the main motive, and also our strongest selling point to do GGS was the major drop in fertility level in Norway since 2010. And we know something, but there's still a lot of puzzling questions about why this is happening. And 2 lines of hypotheses or questions that we address is on one side the role of increasing uncertainty, both for individual itself and also more in a broader sense. Not all of so there is some questions that are addressing these issues in GGS, but still we felt there were the need of more questions. And the other line of questions that we had was, or have still, is the role of preferences and motives for having children in general. So these 2 aspects were for us something we want to, or we want to investigate more in the future. And in order to do that, we added a model on uncertainty that was oh, you can go back, Lars, I will tell you. Thank you. One model on economic, or on uncertainty, that was initiated by the Nordic, the teams from the Nordic countries, and it was led by the Swedish team. When it comes to motives, we then use a model that was proposed by Monica Minarska and Alice Rayban, using questions related to the Miller scale. So now you can push the button. So yes. So in this uncertainty model, I think there is some notes that is published online, but otherwise it can be available if you are interested. Here in this model, there is especially two aspects that was not covered in the baseline questionnaire, and one is about the global uncertainty and one on subjective economic uncertainty. For each of these two topics, there is, in this note, there is different alternatives on questions that can be used to address these questions. And here you see the questions that we have used. And if you want to know more about which one we chose and which is very much in line with what the Swedish team used, you can also ask me for more details on that. Also, something that was not covered in the baseline questionnaire was the issue that the relationship between uncertainty and fertility may be modified by personal aspect or like own resources or personality. So we have also added questions about that into the questionnaire. And then you can have the last one. And then using the Miller model, this is done by having one question, and where people are answering to what degree they find the different statements important or unimportant when for their motives for having children. And they are divided with positive motives and negative motives. And here you can see the battery of questions on that. We are very curious, and that's something we will like. How is this items working? And for our analysis, and we have not looked at it yet, but that so we cannot tell you whether they work or how perfect they are or how imperfect they are, but these are our extra questions. I think I will stop there, and then we can maybe come back to issues if there is questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Trude and Lars, for this presentation. And there's already quite a lot of questions in, among participants. So, Lars, maybe there are still some questions about the sampling frame, whether it was individuals or it's in household, and therefore who received the email and the link. So maybe you can clarify that.
Yeah, it's individuals. We have it's based on the population register, which is individuals, and they draw a random sample from all individuals aged 80 to 54 years by the beginning of November it was, and they were contacted directly. I hope this answers the question.
Yes, and a following question was about some people were really impressed by the size of your cash certificate, but am I right that this was in fact a lottery? It's not that everybody got a 100 euro cash certificate, right?
Yes, it's a lottery. So in the email, letter, and also in some of the reminders sent out in text messages, it was stated clearly, if you complete the survey, you can win one of 65 gift cards. So there's no incentive to everyone. There's the possibility, if you complete the survey, to participate in a lottery. And again, the winning chance and the amount is based on experience of the Department for Methods and Data Collection at Statistics Norway. So they tested different incentives, even also in an online survey, and they concluded that this is a survey this is an incentive not so costly, but still working. So increases response rate to some degree. Of course, the more money you put, the more response rate you get, but budgets are always limited.
Trade-off, yeah. And then the additional question, which you touched upon, but some people are curious about still the breakoffs. And if I understood well, it's not that throughout the survey people were dropping off. You were able to identify really some specific place. So the part of the question was, and that came from Anna Haglund, saying, is it in the beginning throughout the survey, or is it more into what you think are more complex part of the questionnaire?
Okay, so the slide this table on the drop-off rates, it is based on, like, by the time the server went, we got every day a feedback from Needy who clicked on it, who crossed off for consent, and then we had some extra questions. Did we get valid answers here and there? And based on these small indicators, I think it is special. So we see that, as I mentioned, we see you have over 60% clicked on it, or I think about 60% clicked on it, but then already consent is going 10%, it's 10% less. And then you again have a few less that start. And then it's okay. And then you come to the partnership histories, and then come the fertility histories. We didn't have single indicators here for doing this, or I did not have. So I'm sure someone could dig deep into it, but it's all, again, a question of limited time and resources. But we see that there's quite a strong drop when one looks who is coming to the household grid. And here the drop is relatively big. Thereafter, the drop is relatively little. The drop-offs are relatively little. So this is the best answer I have by today.
Thanks for this. An additional question, but that's pure speculation. So when you started at the beginning, you said that the experience of Statistics Norway was that at the very beginning of the pandemics, the response rate were quite high, and now you got much lower. I have to say that in the Netherlands, we got exactly the same experience. Statistics Netherlands was reporting relatively high response rate at the beginning and now much lower. Do you think that people are getting some sort of web Zoom fatigue, which could explain the fact that later on the response rates are lower? Or do you think that it's something else in the way respondents were motivated, approach? What's your, and speculation, of course, we cannot verify, but what's your personal gut feeling about it?
I have to admit, I've thought a lot about this, and my conclusion is this is the main problem of the web survey. It is speculation. So it is really hard to understand why people participate or not participate. Of course, this experience of Statistics Norway is from March 2020. It is they did a living survey on conditions of living, which is quite interesting because they have before lockdown, after lockdown, which is quite interesting data. And there they have quite good response rates also after lockdown. And then they did a special COVID survey. Thereafter, a lot of surveys were conducted in Norway. I think the National Institute for Public Health is running, I got so many text messages from them and emails to participate in their survey, and also other agencies, private, trying to collect data because there's huge interest what is happening during lockdown. So that it's a possibility, but you don't know. It's really difficult. Other thing we see is, and this is why I said it in the lessons learned, and I just mentioned, was what I'm thinking about, was our information good enough? We called it the survey on family and work. And we see that 12% more women than men click on it and respond to it. So maybe we could have worked more how to make it interesting for everyone or for men. How could we make very explicit why is this a great survey? So I think maybe we could have could have done better here. But it is really difficult to conclude here because it's a web survey and you don't know. I mean, we got some feedback that people thought it was hard to fill out the dates. So this is why I say keep it as simple as possible. It's very important that on the phone, and because I think most people answer it on the phone in Norway. It's very important that this online, that it works very smooth. What did work well is like we got few complaints that people could not continue where they stopped, because one fantastic thing about this, and we addressed this also in the letter to them, you can start the survey. If you need a break, you can just continue later. If it doesn't work with refresh the browser, you just click on the link again and you will continue where you stopped. And this worked, I think, quite well. And that's great, because like people can start answering the questionnaire in, well, not while they commute, because everyone was in lockdown, or a lot of people in lockdown, but you can start and continue later. So that, I think, is really a good thing.
Thanks, Lars. There's a question from Isabella, although it's more addressed to us and the central team. They were particularly interested in the statistics you presented and the clicking, starting the survey, so that allow you to disaggregate better as to where the breaks off are, and asking if this standard. And yes, the nice thing about the Blaze setup that we're using right now does collect that information. So yes, that's a piece of information that is standard provided back to the national teams. So that's part of the package. Now, a really tricky one coming from Mariana from Uruguay. How long did the survey last in minutes? And we're all smiling because it sounds like a really easy question. And Lars, I pass it on to you to answer that one.
Okay, of course we did tests, and so we provided that depending on your life history, it will approximately take you 40 minutes to answer it. And that was very high estimate. So we didn't want to, that they felt like we're giving them wrong information. But analyzing it is very difficult because you don't know when people take a break. So some people can start the survey early in the morning and then stop, and then so it is very time consuming to analyze exactly an average duration. So I think what they sometimes do is you take a mean value for each question and add it up, but it's very difficult to answer this question. And I again, we have not done it so detailed yet.
Yeah, I have to say that in the Central Hub, this is one aspect that we're currently looking at. And indeed, how do you take into account the fact that people do take breaks? And that's why it makes that question difficult to answer, but we're certainly working on it. There's a question for you, Trude. And do you know if that coming from Borbola Zuka, sorry to mispronounce your name, about whether the uncertainty module will be included in other survey?
Yes. As far as I know, at least all the Nordic countries who are participating, but I don't have an overview. I know for sure that there has been a lot of interest. So many country representatives have contacted me and asked about it. So I have shared all the information I have with them. But I guess it's the GGP hub who are planning, who might have a better overview. But from my point of view, I hope other countries will include some of the countries as well, because I do feel that it is an important aspect to follow in the future, and especially this aspect of the global uncertainty, and as we have seen now with the pandemic, this how this is creating a more joint sort of feeling. But I don't have a good one number. Thanks.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, Trude, that if the audience is interested to know more about the module, there's a technical paper written by Gunnar Andersen, Gerda Neyer, and colleagues, which is available on our GGP website about the uncertainty module, so you can get more detail there. And just to explain that, as people probably know by now, in the baseline questionnaire, we do allow countries to add country-specific questions, preferably at the end, towards the end of the questionnaire. And the uncertainty module is one that you can treat as a country-specific. And that's in that context that it's being included in quite a few countries at the moment. So that's where.
Can I just add, and then as I mentioned when I talked, we also have this little overview of which questions that at least the Swedes and us included, because there is in this note there is some options. So if you want to have it as comparative as possible with at least Sweden and Norway, you can just email me and ask for that overview.
I'll take one more last question before I formally close this part of the webinar. And as I said, we'll stay open after. The last question is to you, Lars, is about, you did point out that there was an underrepresentation or under-response rate of the people with low level of education, and presumably these were migrant background. I don't think you use any specific strategy to try to oversample or reach out to that group. In retrospect, is that something that sometimes Statistics Norway does, or which would be your take on that one?
It's not something Statistics Norway usually does, as far as I know. And my take on it would be maybe we should have done it.
You mean a specific strategy for that group?
Yeah, especially the low educated. I mean, it's if we would have gone for also the migrants, then the question is, should we have had other languages? And that's, again, very difficult with such a low budget we had and the little team we had. So, but maybe one, yeah, I don't know.
I certainly know that, or if I'm not mistaken, the Swedish team has done an oversample of migrants. So it'll be interesting to learn from them in a forthcoming webinar, their strategies on it. But I think that result that you shared about their underrepresentation, I think it's a very, very important piece of information that you have there. Good. Well, on that, and I think this was great. Thank you so much for this presentation. I know that you're still just getting your hands on the data and analyzing it. So already to be able to share some early results, and also with Trude to show like some of the potential and what you hope to do with this data set. I think that was very inspiring. So I thank you, both of you. I thank also Micah, who is helping on the technical side to organize that. Thanks to the participant, we reach at the end close to 45 people online. So this is great. If some of your questions have not been answered and you want to stay longer, please do so. And to everybody else, thank you. And the next webinar will be announced soon. At the end of June, we will have one from the team in Hong Kong. So stay tuned to our GGP-Connect. Thank you, everybody. Bye.